exactly when this was. I'm pretty sure it was around March of 2018. I was 12 years old and in the 7th grade. I often listened to / read scary stories online about things like sleep paralysis, but I never thought it would happen to me. So before I had woken up, I was having a strange dream. I was playing Counter-Strike, but it felt like I wasn't playing at all, and it was real. I was shooting some targets and then I blacked out for a second. I woke up on the main road that goes into my neighborhood and saw that the road was gone. The houses on my street were very small, 2-story box houses. There were elderly people standing out front of the houses all reading a newspaper, and the sign out front of my neighborhood only read Brook, with the rest crumbling off. I then appeared at my morning bus stop for school, looking at my phone. Everything was normal until a bush that normally isn't there screamed at me. I remember clearly feeling as though this was normal, so I screamed back. We went back and forth until I woke up with the scream echoing in my ears. I was in my bed looking against the wall, unable to move. I hadn't realized that I was experiencing sleep paralysis, but I was still freaked out by the screaming to fall back asleep. I lay there not hearing anything for 5 minutes. I then heard what sounded like heavy boots hitting the ground out in my living room, coming towards my bedroom area. Just so you know, outside my bedroom there is a hallway. On the left is a bathroom. At the end is my parents' room. At the end on the right is a door that goes to my living room. The footsteps grew closer, coming to the hallway and then my parents' room. At that moment I remembered my dad was out of town on a business trip, so my mom, who was a nice small lady, was defenseless. I heard the walking start up again and coming towards my room. The door opened and whatever was out there came in, walked to the side of my bed, and stared at me. I closed my eyes and began to pray. I'm not really religious, but it's the only thing I could think to do. After what felt like hours, I tried to turn over to look and see if anyone is there. I roll over with my eyes still closed to appear to anyone that is there that I'm still asleep. I open my eyes and begin to squint. The coast is clear. I crawl out my bed slowly and look at the clock. 4:14 a.m. Dang, I got school tomorrow, I thought. I tiptoed over to my door and grabbed the decorative oar my mom put on the wall of my room and walked out into the hall. The light in our living room door was open, with a light on, which was not normal, especially when my dad's out of town. I checked the bathroom and peeked around the corner of the door. Nobody, so I make a silent sprint into my mom's room. Putting the oar down on the floor, I shake her awake, quietly whispering her name. Mama, I think there's someone in the house. I heard walking around outside my room, and I began to tear up, realizing this all may have been in my head, and I woke my mom up for nothing. It's all right, Dylan. We can go check the house real quick. I grabbed the oar and go check the house with my mother. There was nobody in our house, so I go back to bed relieved that we were safe, and that none of that was real. I haven't had a sleep paralysis experience since, and I'm glad it wasn't worse. This story is like nothing compared to some of the other stories I've heard about. I am a 19-year-old female, and at the time that all of this happened to me, I was 17. So just to give some long and necessary background, I was and still dating a guy named Kyle. That's not his real name, but go with it. We shared a small group of friends. We were all pretty close to each other. We did almost everything together, especially when it involved smoking weed and doing other harder substances. They were pretty chill and trustworthy friends, or so I thought. Anyways, one day, 2 weeks before my junior year started, I was hanging out with a group at one of their houses, and I just so happened to fall asleep after a while of being there. I woke up probably 5 minutes later to one of my friends touching my inner thigh. Just to note, I was the only female in the group, and my boyfriend wasn't there in this occasion. He was at show choir practice, so he couldn't have been there even if he wanted to. When the friend touching me noticed I woke up, he immediately stopped, and I ran into the bathroom crying. I've been raped and sexually assaulted before, so just going through it again isn't the greatest feeling. A few minutes passed by and I left the bathroom. I pulled one of my friends aside and told him what happened. His response shocked me. He said he saw what happened, but he didn't stop him. I don't know why he didn't, and I guess I'll never know. But that same friend told me not to tell Kyle, because he didn't want any friendships ruined. Well, I obviously told Kyle after show choir practice, and he was understandably pissed off. We've come to the agreement that we will no longer be friends with them anymore. A few days went by, still avoiding the group, and would receive a lot of messages from them, but they were shockingly hurtful messages, saying I'm being overdramatic, that it's my fault it happened, just act like nothing ever happened. He didn't really sexually assault me, and so on. I was pretty destroyed reading all those messages coming from those so-called friends, but for some stupid reason, we all became friends again when school started. I know what you're thinking, why don't we go back to that shitty group of friends? I guess our only lame excuse is that we hate confrontation, and we wanted things to go back to normal. I wanted to feel normal again. Well, obviously it wasn't the best idea taking back those friends, especially one who touched me, because it started to really affect me mentally. I became super depressed. I developed really bad trust issues with everyone, including my boyfriend. I would constantly have panic attacks throughout the day. I started self-harming again. I was extremely suicidal, and I was failing all of my classes because I rarely showed up to school. The school attendants and staff had no idea what was wrong with me. I would refuse to tell them and my family. But one day came around and I couldn't hold it in anymore. I told my family at first. They were supportive, but then it quickly changed. I don't really want to go into details, but for a long time I felt so alone. Later on, around November 2017, my boyfriend did something behind my back with another girl. He didn't cheat on me, he just sold some weed to her, but for some odd reason I mentally got worse. I just didn't know how to cope with anything that has or was happening to me. I started mentally abusing my boyfriend, like extremely bad to where he hated himself, and I think at some point he even became suicidal. Deep down it made me happy. I wanted someone to feel the pain too, but it got so bad to where we broke up twice, but then got back together the same day each time. Now fast forward to around February 2018. One night, that's when it happened. I was having trouble sleeping, and it was getting late. I also had school the next morning, so I was pretty frustrated. Finally, around 1 a.m., I started dozing off. I found myself awake probably about 10 to 15 minutes later. I noticed a tall, dark figure standing across the room in my closet. At first, I thought it was my older brother messing with me because he's done stuff like this before. But as I tried to say his name, I couldn't. That's when I realized I couldn't speak, couldn't move. I was paralyzed. So as I'm staring at this figure in my closet, wondering what the fuck is happening, the figure starts moving closer to me. Then I notice it kind of looks like it was floating towards me. I can feel myself panicking, but I couldn't move or say anything. So when the tall dark figure reached the side of my bed, I kid you not, it bent over and grabbed my nose. Now I wouldn't breathe through out of my nose or mouth. I'm just staring at this dark figure. His face was so close to mine, but I couldn't make out any features. I could feel my heart trying to break out of my chest. My lungs are hurting like hell because I couldn't breathe. I legitimately thought I was going to die. But suddenly, I quickly sat up, gasping for air, looking around my room for that figure, but it wasn't there. I was scared. I was so scared. I didn't know what just happened. I thought I just had the most realistic nightmare of my life. I mean, I guess that's what kind of happened. The next morning when my boyfriend picked me up for school, I told him about the realistic nightmare. He said that's creepy. And that was that. A few weeks later I brought it up to my older brother, and that's when he told me that I actually had sleep paralysis. I had no clue what sleep paralysis is, but after hearing this definition of it and doing some research, I was really freaked out. I read online that stress, anxiety, depression, sleep problems, and some other things can cause sleep paralysis. I realized that everything that had happened to me sort of recently played a big part in my sleep paralysis episode that night. I would be lying if I said I didn't have trouble sleeping for a while after that, but I eventually got over it. But every now and then, I do get a little nervous to go to sleep. Fast forward to now, 2020. Kyle and I are doing really well. Better than ever. We are renting our own apartment. We have 2 cats, and they are absolutely amazing. Our 3-year anniversary is next month, and we are extremely excited. On another note, September 22, 2019, I was diagnosed with extreme depression and anxiety disorder, but now I go to therapy and take medications to help with that. I have never felt better and happier. Oh, and in case you were wondering, we are no longer hanging with those shit friends anymore. Before I start, you gotta know that I have a long history of multiple sleep paralysis ever since I was a child. I dare say multiple in a single night. I'm an 18-year-old male, and while I moved out from my mother's home 2 years ago, and been independent since then, and have been roommates with my uncle for a couple of months now. But that's a different story. Anyway, this is going to be a little bit awkward, given the fact that I was listening to scary stories while on track to fall asleep after waking up at 5 a.m. The same date I'm writing this post, September 25th, 2018. While I was falling asleep with my headphones on, I started to realize I had woken up, but my body couldn't move. Now it was weird for me given the fact that I hadn't had any sleep paralysis recently for a very long time, but I knew what I was going through. My vision started to blur, my head felt heavy, but I could still hear the voice coming out of my headphones, narrating a story. The strangest thing is that I somehow managed to move my hand and try to take off my earbuds. As much as I tried, I couldn't take them off. It's as they were glued to my ears. I somehow managed to take them off, but here's where it got freaky. I could still hear the voice coming through my headphones. I touched my ears and checked if there were anything there. Nothing. I couldn't feel the earbuds at all. I was weirded out. Yelling to my uncle, calling his name to see if he could hear me, but there was no answer. Every time I tried to yell, my voice got weak. It's as if instead of yelling, I was whispering in a loud way. And that's when I started to see things like demons and deformed faces, just staring at me and evilly smiling. I can't explain how they looked, but they were flashing in the ceiling. Weird, right? Yeah, I know. As I was sort of freaking out, I literally did what any young kid would do, and hid under my blanket. Not because I was very scared or frightened for my life, but to see if those faces would go away. Though they did, it doesn't end there. Here's where the most freaky and weird shit happened. As my vision started to clear, and I was able to move more freely, it's when I realized I never even moved a muscle the whole time. I was going through sleep paralysis. Turns out I was hallucinating shit and imagining that I was actually moving and yelling. Like I've said, I've had experience with sleep paralysis for a long time, so I totally have experience on how to actually get out of it when it's a normal one, where you're just awake and can't move. Yeah, I know that's the whole point of one, but not all of them are about hallucinations and imagining. This was one of the few paralysis where I hallucinated and imagined things. Like I said, I haven't had one in a year, I can say. This one is my most recent one. I know it's probably not scary, but for those who have experienced sleep paralysis, know how terrifying it can be and get. It takes a strong mind and soul to get out of one, because you're literally struggling with yourself to be able to move and just come back to reality. For those who never experienced sleep paralysis in their life, I really hope you never do.